Getting pushed around at the line of scrimmage in Dallas has become a recurring theme for the Oklahoma Sooners the past few years. The run game, or lack thereof, never materialized when it mattered most. It's easy to write it off as a bad day, a rivalry loss, lack of preparation, or just being outmatched. But this loss didn't happen in a vacuum, and wasn't about one game plan or one roster. What you saw in the Cotton Bowl wasn't an anomaly. It was the predictable result of a slow, systemic decay that has been eating away at this program's physical identity for the last 5 years. And here's the uncomfortable truth. This rot didn't start with Brent Venables. The data tells a story that begins before he arrived, right at the end of the Lincoln Riley era. It's a story of subtle shifts in recruiting, instability in the coaching staff, and a foundation that began to crack before anyone became too concerned. This is a systemic problem, a cultural one, and because it took years to create, it won't be fixed overnight. To understand how Oklahoma got here and what it will take to truly rebuild, we have to go back and examine the anatomy of a decline. But before we go further, if you like fact-filled Sooner content, please like and subscribe and hit the notification bell. To comprehend the depth of Oklahoma's subsequent struggles in the trenches, one must first establish the standard of excellence that preceded them. The period between 2017 and 2019, under the leadership of head coach Lincoln Riley and offensive line coach Bill Bedenbaugh, represents the modern apex of Sooner offensive line play. It was a time defined not just by statistical dominance, but by a physical identity that formed the bedrock of some of the most prolific offenses in college football history. This era serves as the critical baseline, the gold standard against which the ensuing decline must be measured. The pinnacle of this era was the 2018 season, when the Oklahoma offensive line was officially recognized as the most outstanding unit in the nation, earning the prestigious Joe Moore Award. This group was a collection of future NFL talent, a testament to Bedenbaugh's prowess in both recruiting and development. The starting five featured a lineup of Titans: redshirt junior left tackle Bobby Evans, senior left guard Ben Powers, redshirt freshman center Creed Humphrey, senior right guard Drew Samia, and redshirt junior right tackle Cody Ford. Their performance was not merely good, it was historically great. The 2018 Sooners led the nation in total offense and scoring offense. The line's efficiency was staggering, paving the way for an offense that averaged an FBS record 8.6 yards per play. This mark was a full 0.7 yards higher than the next best team, Alabama, demonstrating a level of efficiency that was in a class of its own. The unit's balance was equally impressive, as Oklahoma ranked second nationally by averaging 6.7 yards per rush, while also leading the country with 11.6 yards per pass attempt. This synergy between an elite line and Riley's dynamic scheme created an offensive juggernaut that produced a Heisman Trophy winning quarterback in Kyler Murray, and a roster of All-Americans, including Powers, Samia, and Ford. The eye test of the 2018 line was confirmed by advanced metrics, which show the 2017 through 2019 period as the high watermark for Oklahoma's rushing attack. The data collected from 2015 through 2025 paints a clear picture of a program operating at peak performance before a noticeable decline. The offensive rushing plays success rate, a measure of how consistently a team stays on schedule and gains a sufficient percentage of yards needed on given a down, reached its peak in 2019. In that season, the Sooners posted a success rate of approximately 0.51, the highest value recorded in the entire 11-year span. This indicates that more than half of their rushing attempts were successful in keeping the offense in advantageous down and distance situations. Even more telling is the trend in offensive rushing plays PPA, which quantifies the value of each play in terms of points. In 2019, Oklahoma's rushing attack generated a PPA of approximately 0.30 per play, another peak for the dataset. This level of efficiency signifies that, on average, every running play was significantly increasing the team's probability of scoring. This was the engine of the offense, a reliable and potent weapon that could be counted on to move the ball and create scoring opportunities. The foundation for this success was laid at the line of scrimmage, as evidenced by metrics like offensive line yards, which measure the yards generated by the offensive line itself. This metric remained at a consistently high level from 2017 through 2019, reflecting the line's ability to generate push and create running lanes at the point of attack. This period of dominance was not an accident or a one-year wonder. The success of the 2018 line was the culmination of years of elite recruiting and, crucially, player development and retention. The anchors of that unit, players like Orlando Brown, Ben Powers, and Cody Ford, were not first-year phenoms, but multi-year starters who had been molded within Bedenbaugh's system. They were veterans who had mastered the scheme's intricacies and developed the cohesion necessary to perform as a single dominant entity. This established a clear formula for success: recruit elite talent, retain it, and develop it over multiple seasons to create a veteran-led, physically imposing front. The subsequent deviation from this formula would prove to be the genesis of the program's decline in the trenches. While the abrupt departure of Lincoln Riley after the 2021 season created a clear dividing line in the program's history, the data reveals that the rupture in the team's offensive foundation had already begun. The 2020 and 2021 seasons represent a critical inflection point, a period where the elite standards established in the previous years began to erode significantly. This decline was not a post-Riley phenomenon, but a well-documented issue that emerged during his final 2 years in Norman, driven by a confluence of coaching changes, personnel disruptions, and a subtle but impactful gap in the talent pipeline. The downward trend is stark and undeniable across multiple key metrics. The offensive rushing play success rate, which peaked at 0.51 in 2019, began a clear decline in 2020 and fell to approximately 0.46 by the end of the 2021 season. While a drop of 0.05 may seem minor, it represents a significant decrease in down-to-down consistency for a run-heavy play-action offense. The biggest piece of evidence, however, lies in the offensive rushing plays PPA. After reaching an elite high of 0.30 in 2019, the efficiency of Oklahoma's run game plummeted. It dropped sharply in 2020 and cratered to a decade low of just 0.10 in 2021. This represents a staggering 66% collapse in the point-producing value of the running game in just 2 seasons. Plays that were once reliably moving the team forward were now barely generating any positive value. This decline in output was directly tied to performance at the line of scrimmage. The offensive line yards metric shows a corresponding drop from 2020 through 2021, indicating the offensive line was generating less push and allowing defenders to make contact with the running backs closer to the line of scrimmage. This is further corroborated by the offensive stuff rate, which began to climb in 2020, meaning a higher percentage of Oklahoma's running plays were being stopped for no gain or a loss. The statistical decay was not just a quiet trend visible only in spreadsheets, it was a palpable on-field issue. Contemporary analysis from the 2021 season confirms the growing concerns, as an article from Storman and Norman published that season bluntly stated, OU's offensive line play has not been good enough so far this season. The piece highlighted specific failures, noting that Oklahoma ran for a paltry 57 yards against West Virginia, the program's fewest since 2012. The offense's 313 total yards in that game was the third worst output during Riley's tenure. These were not isolated incidents, but simply of a deeper systemic problem that had taken root long before the coaching staff overhaul of 2022. The timing of the statistical decline aligns perfectly with significant disruptions in the coaching staff and running back room. While Bill Bedenbaugh remained a constant providing stability at the offensive line coach position, the running back room underwent a seismic shift. On January 27, 2020, Oklahoma hired former star running back Marco Murray to coach the position, replacing Jay Boulware. While Murray was a celebrated alumnus, he was a first-time on-field coach at a major program, having spent just 1 season as an assistant at Arizona. His arrival coincided with a period of unprecedented instability among his players. For the 2020 season, Kennedy Brooks, who had rushed for over 1,000 yards in both 2018 and 2019, opted out due to COVID-19 concerns. Simultaneously, Ramondre Stevenson, the team's other primary back, was suspended for the first half of the season. This thrust younger, less proven players like Seth McGowan and Marcus Major into primary roles. The instability continued into 2021. Brooks returned after a full year away from football, while the team also added Tennessee transfer Eric Gray to the mix. This created a crowded backfield that, while talented, struggled to find a consistent rhythm behind an underperforming offensive line. Gray, a versatile pass catcher, and Brooks, a patient one-cut runner, possessed different styles, and the offense never fully coalesced around a singular identity in the run game. The issues were compounded by a subtle but significant downturn in elite-level recruiting, particularly along the offensive line. The 2018 Joe Moore Award-winning line was built on the backs of top-tier recruits who were developed into veterans. After landing 5-star offensive tackle Bray Walker in the 2018 class, Oklahoma would not sign another 5-star offensive lineman until Michael Fasusi in the 2025 cycle. The classes from 2019 to 2021, while solid, lacked the foundational top-end talent of their predecessors. The 2019 class was led by four-star offensive tackle Stacey Wilkins, the 2020 class by four-star offensive tackle Andrew Rame, and the 2021 class by four-star offensive tackle Savion Byrd. These were good players, but they were not the top 15 program-defining prospects like Orlando Brown that had anchored previous lines. By 2021, the offensive line's depth chart was increasingly populated by these younger players, who were forced into action without the benefit of veteran All-American caliber mentors alongside them. The running back pipeline also showed signs of strength. The 2021 recruiting class featured 0 running back commits, forcing the program to rely on the transfer portal to fill roster spots. The Oklahoma Sooners football program is built upon a bedrock of rushing dominance. These names are etched into college football history. Heisman winners Billy Vessels, Steve Owens, and Billy Sims, modern legends like Adrian Peterson, DeMarco Murray, and Samaje Perine. This legacy of physical ground-and-pound football is not just a part of the Sooners' history, it is central to their identity. The recent struggles culminating in the abysmal performance against Texas represent a stark and alarming departure from this historical standard. A deep dive into the team's rushing statistics over the past 5 seasons reveals a clear and quantifiable erosion of this foundational pillar. The decline from a powerhouse to a pedestrian rushing attack is not an oversight phenomenon, but a gradual decay in both production and efficiency. While the program has maintained a winning record for much of this period, the underlying metrics of the ground game have been flashing warning signs for years. The following data illustrates this troubling trend, charting the steady degradation of one of college football's most storied rushing offenses. A closer examination of this data reveals a nuanced story. At first glance, the 2022 season, under new head coach Brent Venables, appeared to be a high point, with the team averaging a robust 219.4 rushing yards per game. This figure, however, masked underlying systemic cracks that were already beginning to form. That season's production was overwhelmingly driven by the exceptional All-Big 12 performance of transfer running back Eric Gray, who amassed 1,366 yards at an elite 6.4 yards per carry. Similarly, the strong 2021 numbers were buoyed by Kennedy Brooks' 1,253-yard season. The more telling metric is the team's overall yards per attempt, which reflects the efficiency of the entire rushing scheme, including the offensive line, rather than just the individual brilliance of a single back. This number shows a more consistent and concerning downward trajectory. From a healthy 5.5 in 2021, it dropped to 4.9 in 2022, fell further to 4.5 in 2023, and cratered to a dismal 3.9 in 2024. This steady erosion suggests that the presence of NFL-caliber running backs in 2021 and 2022 was papering over growing deficiencies along the offensive line and within the offensive scheme itself. Once that top-tier game-breaking talent departed for the NFL, and the offensive line was forced into a complete rebuild ahead of the 2024 season, the system collapsed under its own weight. The problem was not new in 2024. It was simply and brutally exposed for all to see. Ultimately, the decline was not the result of a single failure, but a compounding effect of multiple disruptions. New running back coach was tasked with managing a room that had lost its most productive player for a season, all while operating behind an offensive line that was younger and less dominant than years past. The system's weaknesses became exposed because there was no single element, not elite veteran talent, not coaching continuity, not schematic consistency, strong enough to compensate for the others. This created a negative feedback loop. An underperforming line couldn't create holes, which would put immense pressure on a disjointed running back room to create yards on its own, which it struggled to do, leading to the offensive stagnation seen in the data. When Brent Venables took over as head coach in December 2021, he inherited an offense with underlying structural issues that had been masked in part by Lincoln Riley's brilliant play calling and elite quarterback play. The foundational problems in the run game and along the offensive line did not vanish with the coaching change. Instead, they were compounded by an unprecedented level of instability at the offensive coordinator position, creating a chaotic environment that made sustained development nearly impossible. The Venables era has been defined by a constant churn in offensive philosophy, with the team cycling through 3 different play callers in as many seasons. This revolving door prevented the offense, and particularly the offensive line, from ever establishing a consistent identity or mastering a single system. Venables' first hire at offensive coordinator was Jeff Lebby, who brought a high-tempo shoot-and-veer system descended from the Art Briles coaching tree. Lebby's offense prioritized speed, using wide receiver splits to stretch the field horizontally and create space for an interior running game and vertical passing attack. The system was predicated on a simple numbers game: run the ball against a light box, 7 or fewer defenders, and throw it against a heavy one, 8 or more. While the offense produced impressive yardage totals, leading the Big 12 with 474 total yards per game in 2022, its reliance on tempo and space often prioritized scheme over raw physicality, failing to fully address the line's fundamental struggles with generating consistent push. Lebby departed after the 2023 season to become the head coach at Mississippi State. To replace Lebby, Venables promoted offensive analyst and former Oklahoma fullback Seth Littrell. Littrell's philosophy was billed as more adaptable, a hybrid system with roots in the air raid but incorporating power run and veer and shoot principles tailored to his personnel. The transition, however, was a catastrophe. The offense failed to establish any identity and its performance plummeted. After dismal outings against Texas and South Carolina, Oklahoma's offense ranked among the worst in the FBS. Littrell was fired mid-season on October 20th, 2024, a stunning fall for a program known for its offensive prowess. The search for stability led Venables to Ben Arbuckle, who was hired on December 2nd, 2024, after successful stints at Washington State and Western Kentucky. His hiring marked the third consecutive coordinator and schematic overhaul in just 3 years, tasking him with rebuilding an offense that had lost its way. The constant turnover at offensive coordinator ensured that the foundational issues inherited from the late Riley era never had a chance to be fixed. The statistical trends show a period of stagnation and, in some cases, further regression. After hitting a low of 0.10 in 2021, the offensive rushing plays PPA saw a modest rebound to 0.20 in Lebby's first year, but this was still a full third below the 2019 peak. The metric that then flattened out, never approaching the elite levels of the past. Similarly, the offense rushing play success rate hovered in the 0.46 to 0.48 range. In the complex chess match of modern football, the running game serves as the foundational element that dictates the terms of engagement. A successful ground attack is not merely a method for gaining yards, it is a strategic weapon that controls the clock, imposes physical will, and most critically, creates the favorable conditions under which a passing game can thrive. If a defense is forced to respect the threat of the run, it must commit additional resources, typically linebackers and safeties, to the box, the area near the line of scrimmage. The strategic necessity creates a domino effect across the entire defense. Pass rushers become more hesitant, linebackers are drawn forward by play-action fakes, and safeties must creep closer to support against the run, leaving cornerbacks in one-on-one coverage with less safety help over the top. Conversely, when a team is unable to establish a credible rushing threat, the entire strategic calculus flips. A defense that does not fear the run is liberated from its ground responsibilities. It can cheat back, dropping 7 or 8 defenders into pass coverage, effectively bracketing receivers and shrinking passing windows. The offense becomes one-dimensional and predictable, allowing the defensive coordinator to dictate the flow of the game rather than react to it. This is what has led to a slow decline of rushing downs with an increase in passing down situations. Without the ability to create consistent yards on the ground and staying ahead of schedule, you put your team in a constant state of third and predictable, allowing defenses to control the flow of the game and your playbook. This dynamic was on full display in the Cotton Bowl. The Texas Longhorns defensive staff executed a masterclass against Oklahoma, predicated on the simple and brutal truth that they did not have to honor the Sooner run game. From the outset, Texas showed little concern about Oklahoma's rushing attack, confident that their defensive front could handle the Sooners' offensive line without needing significant support from the secondary. This confidence was well-founded, as Oklahoma's rushing average of 2.3 yards per carry demonstrated a complete inability to generate any push or create running lanes. With the run game neutralized, Texas was free to implement a defensive strategy designed to suffocate Oklahoma's passing attack and, specifically, to exploit the unique tendencies of quarterback John Mateer. The Longhorns consistently dropped 7 or more defenders into coverage, creating a complex web of zone and man-match principles that eliminated easy throws. Oklahoma's receivers found themselves bracketed, with defensive backs playing with outside leverage, knowing they had safety help to that inside. Underneath routes were met by linebackers who had no run-pass conflict to hold them at the line of scrimmage. The strategic failure of Oklahoma's offense against Texas was magnified by the specific and unusual profile of its quarterback, John Mateer. While many quarterbacks struggle when faced with a one-dimensional offense, Mateer's particular skill set makes him uniquely vulnerable to the exact defensive strategy that a failed run game invites. The vulnerability can be described as the Mateer paradox. Advanced performance metrics reveal a fascinating and counterintuitive split in Mateer's effectiveness. When plays break down and he is under pressure, Mateer is statistically one of the most elite quarterbacks in the nation. He once possessed the highest PFF passing grade in the SEC under pressure and ranked second in the entire country in that category. His pressure to sack rate was also once remarkably low at 8.5%, a testament to his exceptional athleticism, escapability, and ability to create off-schedule plays in the midst of chaos. He thrives when he can improvise, extend plays with his legs, and hit receivers on scramble drills, much like former Sooner great Baker Mayfield. However, the paradox emerges when Mateer is given a clean pocket and time to throw. It is in these situations when he should theoretically be at his most comfortable that he is most prone to critical errors. According to PFF data, nearly all of his turnover-worthy plays come from a clean pocket. The data suggests that, with ample time, Mateer can become a little too aggressive and tries to force throws he shouldn't, often locking onto his primary read and telegraphing his intentions to defenders. This brings into focus the critical flaw in Oklahoma's offensive structure. A failed run game allows a defense to drop extra players into coverage, but it can still result in a clean pocket for the quarterback if the defense only rushes 4 players. However, not all clean pockets are created equal. A clean pocket that results from a successful play-action fake, where linebackers are frozen or take a step forward, creates open throwing lanes in the intermediate part of the field. In contrast, a clean pocket that exists simply because the defense has chosen to sacrifice its pass rush in favor of maximum pass coverage is a trap. It gives the quarterback time to survey a field where every receiver is blanketed. This is precisely the worst-case scenario for John Mateer. The Texas defense, by ignoring the run, forced Oklahoma's offense to create the exact type of clean pocket that preys on Mateer's greatest weakness. He was given time to stand and watch as his receivers struggled to separate against 7 or 8 defenders. This baited him into his most dangerous tendency, attempting to force aggressive, low-percentage throws into non-existent windows. And we saw a similar trend emerge. Mateer was given more time to throw than any other game this season. Yet, simultaneously, he put the ball into harm's way more than any other game combined, as well as registering his lowest PFF score by far. The root cause of Oklahoma's offensive predictability and the primary enabler of the defensive schemes that have stifled it is a profoundly ineffective rushing attack. The Sooners' inability to run the football is not merely a secondary weakness, but the foundational flaw upon which all other offensive issues are built. Without a credible threat on the ground, the offense becomes one-dimensional, allowing opposing defensive coordinators to dictate personnel matchups and coverage schemes with impunity. The statistical evidence of this failure is irrefutable. Through the first half of the season, the Sooners ranked 91st in rushing yards per game and a dismal 103rd in yards per rush. These numbers are not simply a product of facing stout defenses. They represent a consistent inability to move the ball on the ground. When isolating for games against Power 4 opponents, the performance craters to an average of just 72.67 rushing yards per game, 112th in the FBS, and 2.7 yards per carry, 116th. Such figures render the running game statistically irrelevant and non-threatening to any competent defense. The epicenter of this problem is an offensive line that has persistently underperformed. Characterized as a disaster in the previous season, the unit has continued to exhibit immense struggles against quality competition. Preseason concerns about the line's ability to transition to the physical demands of the SEC have been fully realized, as the group has failed to generate consistent movement at the point of attack. This deficiency is compounded by the lack of a singular game-breaking talent in the backfield capable of creating yards independently. Freshman Torrey Blaylock leads the team with 290 rushing yards at a modest 4.3 yards per attempt, while heralded transfer Jaden Knott has been a significant disappointment, averaging only 3.2 yards per carry. The data indicates that while the names on the office doors changed, the results in the trenches remain stubbornly mediocre. The offense was unable to reestablish the consistent physical dominance that had once been its hallmark. The problem was clearly deeper than just one play caller or one scheme. The constant schematic churn created an environment where true development was nearly impossible. Offensive line play is arguably the most chemistry-dependent position group in football, relying on thousands of reps to build the nonverbal communication and synchronized footwork needed to execute complex blocking schemes. Asking a group of players to master the rules of Lebby's up-tempo, wide split system one year, only to scrap it for Littrell's multiple front run raid the next, and then pivot again to Arbuckle's wide zone concepts is a recipe for confusion and underperformance. Each system demands different techniques, different reads, and different communication. This constant starting over prevented the offensive line from ever achieving mastery, trapping them in a cycle of learning rather than perfecting. The coordinator carousel under Venables therefore did not just fail to fix the inherited problems, it actively inhibited a solution by denying the offensive line the single most important ingredient for success: stability. What are your thoughts? Do you think the Oklahoma Sooners can turn things around on the rushing attack? Do you think there should be off-season changes from a coaching perspective? Let me know what you think in the comments below. Thanks for watching. Make sure you like and subscribe for more Sooner content. We'll see you next time. Boomer.